Hello there, I'm going to talk about parans today. I'm going to talk about Hellenistic parans and rotated parans. Now the word paran is short for paranatellan. That's a mouthful. Would be the singular or plural paranatella, but fortunately we usually just call them parans. And these terms, Hellenistic parans and rotated parans, they're terms I use to distinguish two different kinds of parans that are described in the astrological literature. So parans are about planets or fixed stars rising and setting. So when a planet or fixed star is rising or setting, it's on the horizon plane, right? I mean, that's a different way of saying the same thing. It's on the horizon plane. And we're particularly interested in when two stars or planets are on the horizon plane. And with rotated parans, we also look at the meridian plane, which, as you probably know, is the point in the sky where the planets reach their highest point from the time they rise to the time they set, about halfway in between that, where it reaches the highest point or the lowest point between setting and then rising again on the meridian plane. Okay, so it's what we call in mundo, when planets are on the horizon or the meridian plane. That's what parans are all about. And let's see an example of it. I've got the Sirius 1.3 software up, and I've got two different windows. This is the window for the sky map. I was playing around with this, getting ready to teach, and I've adjusted it. Sorry. Let me set it back. Okay, it's set back to his birth time. I was adjusting it as I was preparing. Anyway, there's the sky map for the time he was born. I've got horizon and circular selected. So that means this is the horizon, this red thing. It tells me here, red is horizon. Around the outside, and this circle on the right is half the sky below the horizon. On the left is half the sky above the horizon. And right here there's a star. And if I put my arrow there, it tells me it's Vindemiatrix. So Vindemiatrix is on the horizon and just below the horizon. And over here, if I put my arrow there, it tells me it's Shiat, almost exactly on the horizon. Must be slightly below the horizon because it's on this right side. The circle on the right side is below the horizon. And here is Matar. So Bill Clinton was born with three fixed stars on the horizon. And if I go forward 10 minutes, I've got 10 minutes selected, and I hit the right arrow to go forward, watch what happens to Vindemiatrix. Remember, here's Vindemiatrix over here? And I hit the right arrow, and it rose. There it is, boink, it came over here. So within 10 minutes after he was born, Vindemiatrix rose. It was very close to the horizon plane. And if I go back to his birth time, and then back 10 minutes before he was born, I see that Shiat is above the horizon. So Shiat set within 10 minutes before he was born. So those three stars are on the horizon. And I can see that another way. Here's the Sirius main window. I have Bill Clinton's chart up here. And I can go to listings, and then fixed star listings. And I can select number 5 here. 340 stars on the horizon. Also the zenith, nadir, and some other information. And I click OK. And if I scroll down, it will tell me there's Vindemiatrix at altitude 0 south 49. Altitude means distance from the horizon. I mean, altitude has different meanings depending on context. In this context, it means distance from the horizon. And as we saw in the sky map, Vindemiatrix was just below the horizon. So isn't that cool? You saw it, and here it confirms it. And remember, Shiat was almost exactly on the horizon. It tells me it was precisely 17 minutes below the horizon, closer to the horizon than Vindemiatrix, which we saw. And Shiat was having to be setting, and Vindemiatrix was rising. It doesn't tell me that here. It just tells me that they're how close they are to the horizon, which is what I really want to know. And then Matar must be up here. Here it is. Matar is further south. It was a little, and we saw that in the sky map. It was a little further from the horizon at 2 degrees 21 minutes south, meaning below the horizon. So you can see it visually in the sky map, and here's a listing telling you what stars are on the horizon. And we can see when he was born, Bill Clinton was born in his birth chart, The moon was close to the horizon, about 2.5 degrees below the horizon. Neptune, a little over 3 degrees. Got those in capital letters. And then the stars, all these different stars that were also on the horizon or the meridian plane. Canopus was on the meridian plane with only a 34-minute orb. And the orb is measured to the horizon in altitude, because that would be the distance from the horizon. And the orb to the meridian plane is measured in right ascension. So this is the proper way, the intuitively meaningful and intuitively logical way to measure orbs to the horizon would be the altitude, because that's the distance from the horizon, and in right ascension from the midheaven. So here's the basic information that's used for doing parans, telling us what planets and stars are on the horizon plane and on the meridian plane, in this case, at the time Bill Clinton was born. Okay, so you got the idea. We're getting into this now. We're learning about Hellenistic Parans and rotative Parans. We've got the basic idea of what it's about. It's looking at planets and fixed stars in mundo, means on the horizon, and the meridian plane. We've seen it visually in the sky map. We've seen a listing that shows us how far the planets and fixed stars are from the horizon plane and the meridian plane. All right, now, excuse me. Now let's dig in a little deeper. Let's talk about these Hellenistic Parans. Hellenistic Parans go back at least to 275 BC. Later I'm going to show you a reference for that. And all the way back in 275 BC, and probably a lot earlier, astrologers knew that when a star rises and sets, we saw that, for example, Vindemiatrix and Shiat and also Matar were near the horizon, rising and setting, that when a fixed star rises or sets, there will be a certain degree that rises and sets with it. Okay, so whenever at a given location, Bill Clinton was born in Hope, Arkansas. In Hope, Arkansas, when Shiat rises and Vindemiatrix rise, or when Shiat sets actually, and Vindemiatrix rises as they do in his chart, there'll be a certain degree on the ascendant. And that's what we would expect, and that's what the books say, but I verified it. I went into the Sirius software, and I saw when I just picked a star, Alcyone, happens to be the largest star of the group of stars called the Pleiades. I saw when it rises in London. I can show you how I did that. I went into Sirius to find out when it rises. And in the year 2014, it doesn't matter what day you do it on. You can do it any day in 2014. You're going to find that Alcyone rises when the ascendant is 18 Taurus 13. If you go back 50 years earlier, it has moved back to 17 Taurus 26, and 50 years before that, it's 16 Taurus 41. It's most of this is due to precession of the equinoxes, not all of it. So it's somewhere around a degree every 72 years, but not exactly. So it is true that, say, over a year or a few years, within a few minutes of arc, you're going to have the Alcyone, in this case, is connected to 18 Taurus 13 in the year 2014. Connected meaning that whenever Alcyone rises in London, this is not true in other locations, but in London or any other place with the same latitude, when Alcyone rises, the ascendant is 18 Taurus 13. Now this is a big deal, and this is the basis for Hellenistic Parans. Because in Hellenistic astrology, way back 2,000 years ago, roughly in that time period, when a planet rises or sets is a big deal, and the ascendant is a big deal. Now we talk about sun sign, sun sign, sun sign. In those days, the ascendant was more important than the sun sign. So the degree that's rising when a star rises is a big deal. And the ancient astrologers concluded that each star is matched to a particular zodiac degree. It's its partner. So the partner of the Pleiades in London today is 18 Taurus 13. It's almost like a degree, meaning that degree is saturated with Pleiades influence, because when 18 Taurus rises in London, Pleiades rises. They must rise together. And then back 50 years ago, it would have been 17 Taurus 26. It moves very slowly. So you get this idea of a degree, meaning that the degree is saturated or filled or colored with the quality of that star, because that degree rises with that star. Now, by the way, how did I do that in Sirius? What I did was I just picked a day. Here's Alcyone on the horizon. And I picked that same listing that I showed you before, 340 stars. And here is Alcyone on the horizon with an altitude of 0 north 0, 0 on February 19th, 1864 at 9:31:52. How did I find that? I just went to time adjust. You click on interactive chart adjust, and then you can move it forward and backward. Watch this. If I move this just 5 minutes, the nice thing about the time adjust is whatever you're looking at will stay there. Let me just do it 1 minute. Let me do 1 minute. You see Alcyone, altitude 0 north 0, 0. In just 1 minute means it's right on the horizon. I move it 1 minute. I click right. It moves 7 minutes. In just 1 minute of time, I move another minute. Now it's 0 north 15. So you got to have the chart to the minute to have the star right on the horizon. Okay, so what I did is I selected this listing that tells me altitude, and then I used time adjust, and I can also jump to any degree. So what I did is I changed the chart 50 years. I said go to the same degree, and then I used the time adjust, because this thing allows me to jump to any degree I want to jump to. I jumped to the same degree. It wasn't exactly the same, and I used the time adjust. So anyway, you got the idea. You can call up any listing, use the time adjust, and watch how things change. That's how I did it. And I found out where Alcyone, the biggest star in the Pleiades, is. Okay, so the ancient astrologers concluded that in 1964, 17 Taurus 26 ascendant has the quality of Alcyone. It is similar to a degree meaning, is what I was saying. This Alcyone quality goes from 17 Taurus 26 in 1964, 50 years later, in 2014, it would be 18 Taurus 13. Now, here's what a Hellenistic Paran is all about. Suppose you were born in 1964, all right? And suppose Mercury is within a degree of 17 Taurus 26. We want it to be pretty close. Between about 16.5 and 18.5 degrees Taurus, your Mercury is there. Well, your Mercury would have an Alcyone, or in other words, Pleiades quality, because this degree of Taurus has the quality of Pleiades if you were born in London. Now, if you weren't born in London, it's going to be a different position, or the same latitude as London. But if you were born in London, this degree has the quality of the Pleiades because this degree rises with the Pleiades. Well, the Pleiades supposedly give poor eyesight. I don't think that's true. I did some research, but that was an old idea. So maybe you have bad eyesight if your Mercury was around 17.5 degrees Taurus, and you were born in 1964 in London. You get the idea. So that's what the Hellenistic Parans are. The thing that's interesting is that Mercury's not conjunct the Pleiades. It's not aspected to the Pleiades. It's just in the degree where the Pleiades rise. And I'll show you how you select this. Fortunately, you can just select it in Sirius 1.2 or 1.3. You can just select the Hellenistic Parans. And the way you would do that is, let me go back to Bill Clinton's chart. Okay, so I've got Bill Clinton's chart. And I will select listing, fixed stars, and then the very first one. Conjunction to 92 stars, and conjunction to their rise set points. It's going to tell us when planets are conjunct the rising and setting points of the stars. Again, we added this within the last few years to series, starting with Series 1.2, and I scroll down, and there it is. This tells me, for example, that for Bill Clinton, let me go over how to read this, because it may not be obvious. We'll take the fixed star Bellatrix, where Bill Clinton was born in Hope, Arkansas, in that year, or specifically on that date, to be more precise. Bellatrix happens to rise when Cancer 52 is rising. So Bellatrix is associated with that degree, and Mars in Bill Clinton's birth chart, if I scroll up to Mars, I've got a list of planet positions here, 3 Cancer 45, scroll back down. So 3 Cancer 45 is less than a degree, exactly 53 minutes from 2 Cancer 52. So Mars, the way you read this is that Mars is conjunct the degree that Bellatrix rises with a 53-minute orb. So it may seem like a confusing idea and complicated, but isn't it amazing that 2,000 years ago, or more than 2,000 years ago, people were looking at things like this. They were looking to see when a planet was in the same degree as the degree that a fixed star, same degree as the rising degree when a particular fixed star rises. Even though Bellatrix is not rising, if it was rising, 2 Cancer 52 would be rising. You got that? So if Bellatrix was rising, it wasn't, but if it was, the ascendant would be 2 Cancer 52, which is the same as his Mars. That's what a Hellenistic Paran is. If that was a little confusing, you can watch this again. It's really a simple idea, but it's not how we're used to thinking in astrology, because we're looking at what degree happens to be rising when a star is rising, and then we're seeing that the planet is at that same degree. So it's a, it's just an idea that we don't usually use, but it was used 2,000 years ago. Okay, so now, sorry about that, my phone rang. I just closed that. All right, so we now know what a Hellenistic Paran is. Okay, the thing I find fascinating is that Bellatrix is not actually rising. If it was rising, Mercury would be conjunct the rising degree. And that's the idea. All right, now, just to give you some references on this is a quote, and here's this website, and it says, for Parans, stars that rising simultaneously are constellations, parts thereof, also of signs of the zodiac, are especially bright individual stars which become visible or invisible at the same time at certain degrees or decadent sections of the ecliptic. They were first described by Aratus. Well, anyway, that's kind of convoluted language, but basically it's saying you have two parts of the sky, rising or setting at the same time. And Aratus lived about 315 to 240 BC. Now, here's a simpler explanation of a Paran from this website. Paranatellan literally means rising up with, and it's an astrological term applied to certain extra-zodiacal constellations. By extra-zodiacal, it means constellations outside the zodiac, which rise at the same time as the respective 36 decanates of the zodiac. So what they did is they weren't always looking at the specific degree, but a 10-degree section of the sky, because these decanates or 10-degree sections were very important. So you're looking at parts of the sky that rise and set together. That's what it is. But those are some, references just to show you I didn't make this up. This is, in the literature, this is what people were doing. You want to see what parts of the sky are rising and setting at the same time. And then this idea of seeing if a planet is at the degree of the ascendant when a particular star rose came up in some of the Hellenistic literature as well. Okay, so you now know what a Hellenistic Paran is, even though it's maybe a little abstract if you're not used to thinking about these things. But remember, in modern astrology, we're really fixated on the ecliptic plane and the zodiac. In a lot of the ancient astrology, they used the horizon plane a lot. They were really interested in the rising and setting of stars. A huge emphasis on the ascendant, also the meridian plane. Okay, rotated Parans. Now, rotated parans, well, first of all, paran, as usually defined, is not a Hellenistic paran. It's when two planets or fixed stars are on the horizon or meridian plane. Simple and elegant idea. If I look at the sky map for Bill Clinton, let me put this back to his birth time, back to that. I had adjusted it back. Any of these stars, like this one, Canopus, is on the meridian plane, and Mersum, they're on the meridian plane. So any stars that are on the meridian plane or the horizon plane are paran to each other. So Shiat, Vindemiatrix, Canopus, they're all on the meridian plane or the horizon plane, so they're all in paran to each other. So that's what it means. But we're not. It's not really that exciting that Vindemiatrix, Shiat, and Matar are on the horizon plane and Canopus is on the meridian plane, because that's true for anyone at that latitude of birth. The same, in Hope, Arkansas, or any other city at that latitude at that time of the day. What gets very interesting is when two planets, which would be extremely rare, or a planet and a fixed star are on the horizon plane or meridian plane. But most people are not born with this planet on the horizon plane. So we often use rotated parans. And everybody has rotated parans. Not everybody has a paran with a planet. Chances are you don't have a planet on the horizon or meridian plane, but if we rotate the sky, so you rotate the sky and you see what stars would be on the horizon and meridian plane together if you rotate it. Let me explain what I mean by rotation. We can understand the idea of rotation by going back to the Hellenistic Paran. The Hellenistic Paran, remember, is a planet conjunct the zodiac degree that rises or sets with a fixed star. You can rephrase what a Hellenistic Paran is as follows. I have it here in blue. A Hellenistic Paran is a planet and a fixed star on the horizon plane if the sky is rotated to put the fixed star on the horizon. So, and I say down here, a Hellenistic Paran can be viewed as a kind of rotated paran. So another way of looking at Hellenistic Parans is that it's a paran that occurs if you rotate the sky to put the fixed star on the horizon. So you're taking the sky and rotating it, which is what essentially happens during the day anyway. The whole sky spins around, which is an optical illusion because the Earth is spinning on its axis. So you rotate the sky, and you see what planets end up on the horizon. So you can look at a Hellenistic Paran as a kind of a rotated paran. You've just rotated the fixed star, and then with the fixed star rotated to be on the horizon, you see what planets are conjunct the ascendant. And the newer idea, or revised idea of a rotated paran, is you still rotate the sky to put a fixed star on the horizon, but then instead of getting a planet conjunct that ascendant, you just rotate the sky to put two planets on the horizon or the meridian plane. It's a variation on the original Hellenistic idea. In some ways it's a kind of a simplified, more elegant idea that we take this sky and we rotate it. We can actually rotate it just by using the time adjust. If I use the time adjust, I'm rotating the sky. Let me do it 1 hour at a time. If I go forward an hour, I'm rotating the sky around. Everything's rotating around. The only problem is that some of the objects, like Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, have a significant amount of motion, and they're also moving. But the fixed stars are just going to rotate around during the day. So the bottom line is we can rotate the sky using spherical trigonometry. And I've got it on this next thing. On this next slide, for the fixed stars and the outer planets Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, we can find the rotated parans by searching from about 12 hours before to 12 hours after birth. So you just rotate the sky, and because they're not moving, they don't have any motion. I mean, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto might move a few minutes a day, hardly at all. and the fixed stars even less. It's the parens that occur if you just move the chart back and forth. And I'll show you how we can verify that real quickly. I'll show you how we verify that with Bill Clinton's chart. If I look at, go to Bill Clinton's, I've got Bill Clinton up here, and I select listings, parens, and then rotated parens right there. This will show me the rotated parens. And Kepler also has this feature. And there they are. These are all the rotated parens. And it produces first the planets. And here's what I was referring to. It shows me that when Neptune is rotated to be on the midheaven, and Uranus is rotated to set, when I put the Neptune right on the midheaven, the rotated Uranus is 2 degrees 10 minutes north or above the horizon. So these are rotated parens using a 3-degree orb of planet to planet. And these are rotated parens, and you see there are a lot of them, of planet to fixed stars. And first you produce a list by planet and then orb, and then below this it starts a list sorted by name of the planet. So if I want to find know if a particular rotated paren is there, I can find it. So those are the rotated parens, and I can verify, I'll show you this, the Neptune-Uranus orb, 2 degrees 10 minutes, and I had gone through to the time when Neptune culminates on the day that Bill Clinton was born, on August 19, 1947. And here's a chart, and what I did is I customized the chart wheel to add the midheaven to this list of right ascension, went into the page designer feature, added the midheaven, and then I used time adjust to get the midheaven at 8 Libra 50, Neptune at 8 Libra 50. So I used that time adjust until they were identical. And then if I go to settings, coordinate system, and select one of these horizon systems, local space, horizon, or azimuth altitude, I'll select horizon. And then I look at Uranus, there it is. It'll show me the altitude, 2 north 10. I just confirmed it. That was a little bit technical, but it really is cool. The altitude of Uranus is 2 north 10 when Neptune is on the midheaven. And if I go back to Bill Clinton's chart, and I had selected rotated parens, which I now have listed here, there it is. I've confirmed it, 2 north 10. So because Neptune and Uranus have almost no motion during the day, I can just go to the time of day when they're at those places when Neptune has the same right ascension as the midheaven, and then look at the altitude of Uranus, and it is 2 north 10. Okay, so that's a rotated paren. I got a little bit technical there, but I wanted to just show you that, what the concept is behind this. All right, and then I'm not going to show you this, but, okay, here's the 2 north 10. That works. These are my notes about this. But I'm not going to show you this, the moon algol. I've got an example of it, but I won't probably bore you to death to see another example. But if I look at the time when moon is setting and algol rises, if I do a time adjust, it's going to tell me that algol has an altitude of 1 north 23. But in the listing, for Bill Clinton, if I go down to moon, I'll go to the alphabetical list because it'll be easier to find. Whoops. Where am I here? Moon, algol. So I go to moon and then alphabetically algol. It says it's 0 south 51. So in other words, algol was within 1 degree of rising when the moon is setting. But I can't find that by going forward and backward in time because the moon has motion. So you have to rotate the sky using spherical trigonometry. And fortunately, you don't have to learn spherical trigonometry. The program does it for you and solves it for you. All right, so that's rotated parens. And I'm basically done. And I want to just wrap this up with a few concluding remarks. By the way, I forgot to mention something. This moon algol kind of makes sense. I mean, it does make sense. Bill Clinton has had some conspicuous problems with women, which we don't need to repeat here. We're all familiar with that. And Algol is considered to be a really nasty star that creates all kinds of problems. And the idea that when the moon was setting, Algol was rising in the rotated Paran, a lot of these things make sense. The midheaven canopus makes sense. So these things are very, very interesting to look at and check them out and see if they work. The nice thing is that it's done correctly, technically correct, and I've given you just enough information that I hope you can appreciate that and some of the history and reasoning behind all this. So, some concluding comments. Number one, there is no confusion or debate about how to calculate Hellenistic Parans. The reason there's no confusion is because with a Hellenistic Paran, you only rotate the fixed star. The fixed star has no significant proper motion, no actual motion of its own. So there's no issue with that. We know how to calculate Hellenistic Parans. There can be a debate about how to calculate rotated Parans, because some astrologers move the chart forward 12 hours or move the chart backward 12 hours instead of rotating it. In my opinion, this is inaccurate because of the proper motion of the planets. You can't do that. And furthermore, you're going to get different results depending on whether you go backwards or go forwards in time because of the motion of the planet. So it just doesn't make any sense, to me at least, but some astrologers do it. They have this idea that you can just move the chart forward and backward by 12 hours and you can get the time, get these, what I'm calling rotated Parans. I don't think you can. You have to actually rotate the sky. Just logically and according to what these ideas are, that's what you have to do. The other question is how you measure orbs. People that are moving the chart forward and backward to see what Parans occurred up to 12 hours before and after they're born, they'll measure it by time. How far apart do these things happen in time? That also intuitively doesn't make a lot of sense because you could have a star or a planet sitting right along the horizon and hardly moving for a long period of time. So time is kind of a weird way of measuring orbs. So measuring the orb in altitude from the horizon or right essentially from the midheaven is the actual distance that they are from being in perfect in mundo relationship. Now, a couple other conclusions that I'm done. One is you have to be careful in your interpretation because we saw there are a lot of these things. If you use, I'm using lots of stars here, but you see there's a long list of these rotated Parans, and I've seen people say, this person, I just did it. I said, Bill Clinton has a moon Algol rotated Paran. So you might want to take out a small number of stars that you're working with and make sure that you're not just cherry picking because there's so many things to choose from. If I go through this whole list of Venus, I'm bound to find something to support some idea about what I think the person should be like. So just a note, there's a lot of information there. Final conclusions. I mentioned this, the rotated Parans in Sirius and in Kepler are sorted by orb and name of star, which is handy. So bottom line, final thing, Parans are an ancient idea. They've evolved and changed. We can select them very quickly and easily now. People who've worked with them a lot, I haven't worked with them intensely myself, but even the little bit I have, I think they seem to work. I mean, they seem to make sense, and some astrologers are convinced they do. So I think it's something worth looking at, and it's also worth, having developed this and work with it, precisely and clearly according to the concepts, which we've done when we implemented this in the Kepler and Sirius programs. Okay, thank you very much. I'm at 34 minutes. This is kind of a long video, kind of heavy information. I hope I didn't burn you out there, but I think it's very interesting and an important part of the heritage of astrology, and good chance it's something we can be using more of and help probably improving our interpretations, and now we're able to get that information easily. Thank you very much. God bless. Namaste.